Hey they, we are back for another review of Married at First Sight, Season 19, Episode 9, Two Truths and a Lie, I think. So crazy because I've watched this episode like, I don't know how many times, but life has been lifing me, and I have been dealing with a bit of seasonal depression. Full transparency, November is the month that both my siblings died in, different years but a day apart. My eldest sibling passed away in November on the 21st of 1994, and then I had my middle sibling, my middle brother, passed away 2002 November 20th, 7 days after his birthday. And the past week, I had been very melancholy, very down, and I didn't know why. And I was out on Friday night, and it just came to me. A friend of mine said that I looked down, and it was funny because when they approached me, I was all smiles because I was very happy to see them. So for them to see in my eyes, beyond the smile, that there was some sadness was, it really caught me off guard. And so at that moment, I said, I've been down actually. And I said, I don't know why. And I had just thought about, oh wow, on that night actually, it was one of the anniversaries of my brother. It was the 21st. And so I said, I think it's because of the passing of my brothers. And once I acknowledged it and said it out loud, it changed a lot of things. But I'm feeling good today. I got off work early. I don't have to work tomorrow, so I'm starting my holiday weekend early. And we are going to get into this episode because it was a lot of interesting things to talk about. So the episode opens up with the couples receiving gift boxes from the experts. And it is, we see Megan and Derek, we see Brittany and Will, and we see Chad and Belinda receive boxes. It's funny because Derek opens the box and he pulls out this wrapped item, and Megan says it's probably lube. And then as he starts to unwrap it, she says, is it a vibrator? Or she said, is it a dildo? And he said, it's a vibrator. She was like, don't take it out, whatever. But yeah, they got a nice one. He's like, he's not, familiar with those. But he's like, I'm willing to give it a good old American try, and we need to get started. I was like, hey, no better time than the present, right? Brittany and Will go through their box, and she's like, she's not familiar with using toys and things like that in intimacy. So she asked Will to pick out all the things in the box that he's used before. And so he was like, she was like, you used all that? He's like, yeah. And she's like, oh. Brittany seems so inexperienced to me. I don't know what else to say. She just seems so inexperienced. God bless her, but it's okay. Then we see Belinda and Chad. They have their box, and they pull out these items, and she says, what is that? And he said, nipple clamps. And she said, nipple clamps? That'll hurt. It's about sensation. Maybe that might be too sensitive for your breast. Did I just touch my breast? Please. I'm a hands person. Might be too sensitive for your breast, but he may be aroused by a little nipple play. But what was a contradiction to me is when she said she's not really into like sex toys and things like that. And he said, why is it? Because you never used them, or you've never just had the desire to? Or she said, I feel like I've done it all already. You did it all, but you didn't know what a nipple clamp was, so you haven't done it all. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. So then we see Chad and Belinda. I guess they went to a brewery, and so they got some ale. And Chad says, he's a whiskey guy. He's not really into beer. So he made a selection. Belinda got sweet cider. That sounded tasty, a sweet cider. And they sit outside and they start discussing like her life growing up. So he's like, did you do things like this as a child? She's like, well, I think she grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas. And she said, she had her intimate friend group, and she comes from a small town. Like her graduating class was maybe 200, 250. So it's very small. She said, a good night for them would be hanging out in somebody's front yard with the radio, a nice little kickback, basically, group of friends, radio playing, and they dancing in the yard. So I don't think nothing wrong with that. I think that's cool. I love a kickback. I love intimate settings with just a small group of friends, like at the house, just chilling, whether we watching movies or just sitting around having cocktails and just vibing. That's more my deal than big gatherings and outings. That's when I can sometimes become introverted. I would like to think I'm more of an ambivert. There are times when it's lights, camera, action, and I'm good to go. But for the most part, I try and keep it really close to my immediate friend base, family base, what have you. And what really got me about this scene when they were talking, he asked her, so is Corpus Christi north of something in Texas? And she was like, I really can't tell you. Because she has no sense of direction. She doesn't know a compass. She said, I don't know north, south. No, she said north, east, west, and south. And when she said it like that, I was like, yeah, you have no sense of direction, because north is to south as east is to west. North, south, east, west. But I don't know, that made me think about Belinda a little differently. So then we go on to Jalen and Josh, and they are meeting together in their apartment, and they are discussing trust. This whole conversation, it started out, about they met with the experts. They met with the experts, and they started discussing trust, because she was made aware that he's still following his ex. He says he made a knee-jerk response when she asked, was he in fact still following his ex? And he said he answered just in haste. And he said, no, you didn't answer in haste. You got nervous because you knew the answer was yes, and you were afraid, or you didn't want to deal with the response or the reaction you were going to get. So you felt it was better to say no, then just be honest. That's what that was about. And then they start talking about Burning Man again. If I hear Burning Man anymore, somebody's going to get burnt. He feels like he can't continue to do his activities if she doesn't want to. Jalen said, I would never try and keep you from doing something that you love or that makes you happy. But her whole thing is, I just want you to respect that it's not for me. I don't want to do it. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. Just don't expect me to. And there was some disconnect in him receiving that message. She's saying, I want you to do what makes you happy. After they, retire from speaking with the experts, they're continuing the conversation one-on-one. And, sometimes in a conversation, you may overtalk the other. And he's telling her, you overtalk me, don't overtalk me. And she's like, okay. The first time, it was cool. She was like, okay, go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead. Keep talking. So then when it was her time to speak, and she was speaking, and then he interjected on her. She's like, okay, now you just cut me off, so I would kindly appreciate if you allow me to finish my thought. And this happened a few times, and he came at her. She's like, okay, you just cut me off, and now you're asking me again not to cut you off. She's like, really? Okay, you know what? I'm going to make an effort of practicing that now. Josh, go for it. When somebody responds to you that way, maybe you need to take a step back. Just take a step back. Bring it down. Calm down. And really try and understand where they're coming from. Like people say, you listen to respond, not to comprehend and understand. So, yeah. And he really became emotional and started crying because she didn't want to go to Burning Man. And she's sitting there and saying, Josh, I would not keep you from going to your Burning Man festivals. What I am saying to you is, I know that is not something I want to do. And I would like for you to respect that I don't want to, but you most certainly may continue. He said, then he attacked her, part of her paraprofession. He said, well, what if you had to stop spin? What if you... She said, whoa, if you were ever thought about telling me that I had to give up spin, there is no us, because I'm not doing that. I'm not going to. And so he said, I think you're becoming defensive. She said, no, I understand what you're saying clearly. And she started feeling backed in a corner. She verbalized and expressed, I feel backed in a corner. When the experts were there, you made it seem like you understood that this is something that she doesn't have to do. Pastor Cal said she doesn't want to do it. But then when the experts leave, you're back on your soapbox about Burning Man. Why don't you all sit down, make a list of interests and hobbies, and see which ones connect between the both of you, where there is likeness, and then elaborate on those interests and create your hobbies and your together things from there. Because at the end of the day, it is not realistic that a couple is going to do everything together. There may be an anomaly out there, some exceptions to the rule that they are just like, they do everything together and they're content, they're happy that way. But people, we're individuals. And moreover, you're coming into this thing, you all didn't actually choose each other. You were chosen for each other. So you have to dig deeper and have a little bit more understanding and be like, okay, this, I have my thing, they have their thing. Let's work on trying to find our thing together instead of imposing on someone what you want to do. Simple as that. So then it was this other thing. I guess he was talking and she might have subtly just rolled the eyes, and he was like, don't ever roll your eyes at me. That right there set me off. I would, and they would have got some good ratings on this one little clip, because I would have said, don't ever talk to me like that again. I am an adult and you will respect me as an adult. These are my body parts and I will do with my body parts what I want. And if I felt like rolling my eyes, then so be it. I don't care how disrespected you feel. I feel disrespected in this moment with you talking down to me. You are not my parent. So don't ever tell me not to ever do something. Are we understood? And he probably would have felt really threatened at that moment. Not because it would have been too abrasive for him. But it's not abrasive. It's standing on business. Bitch, you're not going to talk to me crazy. Because you keep chastising me and wanting to give me these lessons in etiquette while we're trying to have a conversation, but you are doing the same thing. So don't tell me about what not to do if you can't lead by example. That's all I'm saying. Moving right along. Rhonda and Pat. Raggedy Rhonda. Okay, so Rhonda thought it would be a good idea to take Mr. Pat to the cemetery to meet her father. Okay, Rhonda, no, we don't go to the cemeteries, okay? So she's in the car, she's having this conversation. She's like, they used to live in Kilgore up until this certain time, and then she moved to Bernie, and then she's like, whoa, turn right here. He's like, oh. So he's turning, and you can see they're like on the freeway. So he's turning off, he's coming off the freeway, and then he says, okay, so like to get back into the conversation, he's like, okay, so you lived in Kilgore. So she's like, I was way past Kilgore. I was talking about Bernie. I was like, they were in the same goddamn breath. Kilgore and Bernie were mentioned at the same time. So he was one phrase behind what you said, one sentence. Girl, bye. So then she want to start talking about Uncle Joe and his playboys, and true to having a conversation, Pat just shared how he's like, oh, you know, that was pretty common back in those days. You know, I remember my father had a stack of playboys in his closet, and she took that as he's not listening to her because he shared something that had to do with the conversation, within the conversation. It wasn't all about Rhonda at the moment. And she got in her feelings. I'm like, another reason I don't like you. So now we're at the cemetery. She's telling him, don't step on the graves. Bitch, just because you see a headstone, you walking on graves. Just because you walking on that grass, all them vaults up under that ground, you walking on top of somebody. So they get to her father's tombstone. They sit down in front of the tombstone. She asked this man, she says, is there anything you want to say? He sat there and he said, it's nice to meet you. What do you say to the ground? What do I say when I know I'm not going to get a response? So then she asked for time to herself. So he excuses himself, which I'm sure he was happy to. And she's asking her, she said to her father, and the subtitles came up, she said, how are you? He's better than her right now, I can assure you, because he's not here. Rhonda sat there and she went through another emotional episode, and she was talking about how effing hard it is. And then they get back in the car, they're driving, and she's just being rude. She's being rude. He's trying to keep up with the conversation. She's sharing so much. It's like information overload. She is sharing so much information. He's trying to keep up. And so then she's like, I feel like you're not listening to me. And so then he shuts down. Then she had the audacity, or the caucasity, I should say, to ask him, are you all right? He said, no. She said, what's wrong? He said, I'm frustrated right now. He said, it feels like I don't do anything right for you. I'm trying to listen to what you're sharing with me. I'm driving and I may not catch every single thing. Is it so hard for you to repeat it without me being chastised? She expresses how she has this need to be seen and heard. This is obvious. Like, you have to be the center of attention. And if you're not, you fall apart. He says he feels like he's being tested on every hand. And then she gives her version of an apology. And then she shares that that wasn't her intention. And she asked him to extend her grace. Why should he extend you grace if you're not mature enough to reciprocate? Have you extended him any grace when he doesn't catch every word that comes out of your mouth? Have you extended him grace when he feels taken off guard because you're like giving him pop quizzes about you? No. So I don't feel like you should be asking for something that you're not extending. And if you're going to ask for it, extend it. Give it to receive it. Now we see Britt and Will, they prepare to meet the experts. So Brittany is just very emotional for me. Her love language are words of affirmation. She needs to hear it to feel validated. If she doesn't hear it, whether you're showing her or not, if she doesn't hear it, she thinks there's a problem. The experts ask, is there an issue? Will says no. Brittany sits there in the opposite of emotions, pensive, as if, I know you lying. So we start to unveil that Brittany, which I'm sure you've all observed, she battles with insecurity and says she feels like she's walking on eggshells with Will. Now, Will isn't the most expressive when it comes to emotion. He's not. He's a very monotone, matter-of-fact person. And it can come off dull and dry and maybe even to some uncaring. But go by what you see, not what a person says. He can tell you anything. He could tell you anything, but then his actions won't match it. And if you're in tune, you would start to see that yourself. They also share that they haven't discussed or really sat down and brainstormed what they're going to do post-production, i.e. their living arrangement. So Will said, I guess we'll probably stay at your house, but I'm going to keep my apartment. How he said it, it was like, yeah, that wasn't the best delivery. Sometimes you can have a thought and it is ideal to elaborate on that thought for clarity's sake. So his thought was miscommunicated, but he cleared it up and explained that, well, he's only 7 minutes away from the airport. He just re-signed a lease, so it's a matter of breaking the lease. We're not trying to spend money on breaking a lease. And then, I mean, unless she wants to spend the dough. And then he's like, I also live closer to downtown, so we could stay at my place. And then I have a call. Excuse me. I'm back. That was my daddy. He was calling to check on me. So, as I was saying, Will was explaining that he's closer to downtown, so they could stay at his house at times if they want to go out and have a night on the town. It's just closer. So then they were like, okay, that makes more sense. So when you have these thoughts, you have to elaborate on your thought, because when you just condense it and say it the way he did, it can be received a bit abrasive. And he acknowledged that. Then they started talking about something else. Brittany just, I could see it. She welting up. She finna cry. So, oh, Brittany gonna cry. And sure as Brittany started crying. And so in that moment, Will embraced her. He pulled her in. And Dr. Pia pointed out, if he didn't care, he wouldn't have pulled you closer. Like I said, go by what you see. Go by what you see, sweetheart, not what a person is saying out of their mouth. Because I can tell you anything. I can tell you I think you're beautiful, and then I tell somebody else to think you like a dog. It's just something to take into consideration. So then we have Meg and Derek. And Derek shares that he finally said, I love you. Megan feels more secure. Now, back to Rhonda. Rhonda and Pat are in the kitchen and they're sharing some pizza and vino. And she says that she's been going through her head about what is it that why she's so stuck on the need to be seen and heard. And so she relates it back to her childhood. This is childhood trauma. This 63-year-old woman is bringing up, she's dredging up, and she says how it goes back to never feeling chosen. She never felt chosen by her father. He favored her sister more. I guess she was more of a tomboy. They never had a son, so he might have had more of a connection with Rhonda's sister because she went hunting with the father. He took her to tennis lessons. They did, things that you might do with your son. And they had that connection. And she said they never had those type of bonds and connections. And so she never felt chosen. And so also then when she got into relationships, then she felt like they didn't work because she was too much. She didn't behave a certain way, or she was flirting. She said when she wasn't. I find that hard to believe because, Rhonda, you are very animated. You are very animated. And I just started sweating. Woo! And if you are in a certain age bracket, you understand. So she says that she relates her need to be seen with her childhood. Pat acknowledges that. He said that makes a lot of sense. And he says, I don't want you to feel like you're not being heard or you're not being, he just wants to reassure her. And then finally we have Britt and Will. They're having Britt's family, her aunt, they're having a gathering at the house. So Britt and Will are the guests of honor. And I just have to say, Brittany's family is extra. They I don't know if it was the camera. I don't know if it was the cameras or they are just really extra. But they were putting on. And the first cousin the gal boy, she's like, I'm throwing rice. I was like, girl, sit your ass down. And so they're sitting on the sofa with the mom, and she's going through childhood pictures of Brittany. And it's like, oh, she was such a bubbly baby. And so Will points out, he was like, it would be nice to see, more of that side. She's like, I am bubbly. And the mother and Will sit there with emotions of disagreement. And so the mama said, you are not bubbly. That's all I need to hear. Mama said you're not, so you're not. Then they start discussing Brittany's idiosyncrasies, like she used to bite her fingernails down to the cuticle, so she had no fingernail, and she used to rip off her toenails. Either you had serious anxiety, or you were self-harmer and you didn't want to do anything really extreme, so you were like, I'll just do this. It's either you were a self-harmer or you had some real major anxiety going on in your life. And it's not, children can have anxiety, adolescents can have anxiety. That's not, but yeah, no bueno. So Brittany also shares that she's never introduced anyone to her family, a partner, and I'm like, oh, you're 29 and you've never introduced, not even, when you're in high school and you have a boyfriend and your mom and your daddy like, I want to meet your boyfriend, I want to meet this young man, I want to meet him before you can go to the dance or whatever. Nobody. That stuck out for me, and I was like, that's a sign. That's not a good sign. And then lastly, they got all hung up on wanting to see them kiss. And so one relative said, I want to see y'all kiss. So they kissed. So they said, oh, they kissed. So then the auntie come out the kitchen and she like, I want to see y'all kiss for me. It was some real voyeuristic, freaky, weirdo shit going on. Like, they just kept making them kiss. So then finally a whole trough of family members came out of the back and just like, oh yeah, we want to see y'all kiss. We ain't never seen Brittany kiss nobody before. These are all, pew, pew, pew. I guarantee you Will was taking in all of that. But he appeased and he patronized and he gave her a nice little grab by the neck. I'm like, oh yeah, grab me by my neck. And he kissed her and stuff. I bet you her pukilaki got moist, but because that's the kind of shit that Brittany thrive off of. And then the end of the show, we find out what? Meg and Derek announced she's pregnant. Megan is pregnant. Megan is pregnant. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Let me know what you think of the couples, because it's like really winding up. I got like two more episodes or 2 more reviews, and I think it was nice and sweet and condensed and to the point. So in the meantime, don't forget to rate, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, bye.